What's up, thought experimenters? Welcome to the Thought Experiment. Today I want to talk about how there's a flood myth or flood story in every single religion and pretty much every single continent all around the world. How it happened, why it happened, it's all subject for debate. I found a new theory in a podcast I was watching that I've literally never heard before, and it's kind of mind-blowing, so I wanted you guys to see it. Pretty fucking interesting if you ask me. Seriously. Okay, here we go.
So that I recorded with Ryan actually called "The Day the Earth Stood Still," and I could see it in your eyes that you were intrigued by it. I think that between you and I kind of talking about this thing, we might be able to take this to the next level and potentially get to how this could have happened in the distant past. So the basic premise of it is that the Earth spins at about 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, and so you have all of this momentum of the atmosphere. You don't feel the wind spinning at 1,000 miles per hour because we're turning along with it. Right. But if the Earth were to slow down to not spinning, we would feel 1,000 miles per hour of wind. We would also feel that ocean water start to go from west to east onto every major landmass in the world. And so what if the Earth's rotation ever slowed down? That's kind of the question that sparked this thing. What would the Earth look like today? And I think it would look exactly like it looks like today, actually, as it turns out, which makes the question interesting. Has it ever happened? If the Earth were to slow down, you've got all of this ocean water, which is traveling in this direction towards the west coast of every continent. And what we see is what looks like the remnants of some massive event where ocean water would have traveled onto land. And we see that because salt water creates salinization, and salinization creates desert. And so what we have on the west coast of the United States, a lot of desert. And we have what looks like potentially water damage. And of course, all of these areas are salt. This is all salt deposits. And so what that looks like to me is that ocean water settled here and then evaporated and left all of the ocean salt on the top of the land, on the topography. When you can see Salt Lake City, the explanation for Salt Lake City, I kind of like my explanation better, to be honest with you. Like, I think it makes more sense. But you see it going up and down the west coast of every major continent. You can see it in South America, again, salt deposits here. When you get down to this spot right here, again, all of this water would have been coming in on this direction. You can see all of this land on top of Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, Belize. It would have been pushed from the west to the east, and you kind of see that. You see that smearing effect happening right there. As you go down into South America, you see, again, this land up here is less green and less fertile. And all of that water would have been pushing into here. And down here, you have a ton of salt deposits along this river. This is all salt deposits on here. So I guarantee you there's some elevation change here where just the water didn't reach. But then you come down to here, and you've got the Andes Mountains. The Andes Mountains can get up to 14,000 feet tall, right? And so the water is not going to get past the Andes Mountains. If it was a 2-mile high, if you're talking 10,000 feet of water, then, it's going to bust up against these mountains. It's going to potentially settle in some of these areas and, again, leave these salt deposits here. You've got a major salt flat right down here in this area, Salar de Uyuni, just in Bolivia. It looks like if the water was pushing this way, it almost looks like it pushed and created this V shape here, and then, almost like crumbled. If you were holding down a piece of paper on a desk from the outside on two sides, and you just pushed it, slid it towards the middle, it creates this crinkle effect. That's really what this looks like, is happening with the land just being pushed from the west to the east. And then you have this smearing effect again right down here in South America, where it looks like all of the land potentially could have been pushed out from the west to the east. If this mountain range was taller, you see this smearing effect down here. And then this formation, which is crazy, because you have to think that if the water was going from west to east, it's of course going to be a perfectly flat ring at the equator. But then as you go down to the South Pole, it's going to be turning like this. It's going to be like making a circle around South America. It's going to be encircling it, in Antarctica rather. Sorry. And that's exactly what you see with this little thumb looking thing. It's pushed through. It looks like the land was at one point connected here, and it looks like the water has just completely pushed through and, goes around Antarctica, around Antarctica. And then, that's kind of the formation. And then again, you have this massive body of water here in the North Atlantic Ocean, and you can just see how much salinization. I mean, this is, of course, all desert now, but you think about all of this water being pushed into the Mediterranean Sea. This top part would have been covered with an ice sheet, so it's not busting into there. It's all going to either be coming, directly onto the land from the west coast of Africa, Mauritania, the Richat structure, being pushed into the Mediterranean Sea, and then potentially creating some of these lines in the sand, some of these big striations, which are supposedly from wind. These really don't look like wind, and then there's salt deposits that are 12,000 feet. I mean, there's salt deposits all over from what looks like dried ocean water, all over Africa, and you continue to see these striations, these lines being kind of pushed out. Maybe that's if the Earth did speed back up its rotation. Maybe the water was kind of drained out from the right to the left. I don't know, but that pure this is all speculation. But then, you look at Emikusi, and, you look at the inside of Emikusi.
Look at that.
Salt.
Wow.
At the top of a volcano. So at some point, if this obviously hasn't erupted since prior to that event, or else it would have burned up all the salt, and it looks like what happened here was, again, all of this water just pushed around the top of Emikusi, which is, Emikusi is like 14,000 feet tall, man. Wow. I mean, you're talking about just a ridiculous amount of water that would have been pushing through here and just burning down to the bedrock and, creating these striations in the sand. So there's a lot of evidence for this. And then you look at the Dead Sea here, and the Dead Sea sits between some mountain ranges, and the Dead Sea is 30% salt water. So if this had filled up to the top with ocean water, and since this event happened, the ocean water had just evaporated, then of course you would be left with a Dead Sea that has 30% ocean water, of course, and you see that in other bodies of water as well. But that's obviously, when you think about all the water that would have been pushed through the Mediterranean and into this area, and then of course you look at these striations in the sand, that came down and were forced out this direction, and it's just that whether or not it happened, I mean, it's
very compelling.
Very compelling. A lot of evidence for this all over the world. And I mean, we see Australia, which looks like west to east, and and you look at the salt deposits that you see in Australia. I don't know, man.
This is the best evidence I've seen of a global flood, other than different layers that have been taken from ice core collections.
Okay.
This is the best.
Yeah.
Now, no matter what your religion or your theory on the flood, whether it happened or not, most people say it happened, but nobody really says how it happened. And I think this is pretty good. Like they said, it's pretty compelling. So think about it, right? And I appreciate the fact that if they come off as conspiracy theorists, they're saying, I'm not 100% sure this is what happened, but the evidence is there. They're not saying this is fact, this is what happened. And I appreciate that. Now, the two oldest texts that we can find, well, they're actually tablets, is the cuneiform tablets, the Epic of Gilgamesh, and that is super, super old, thousands of years old. If you don't know what the story for the Epic of Gilgamesh is, most people don't, but George Lucas got Star Wars from that epic. He basically took the text and fictionalized it. And then the oldest text that we know of is another tablet, and that's the Emerald Tablets, this one. It's written by Thoth. Cat Williams was talking about this on Joe Rogan's podcast, which is cool.
If you follow information about humankind, you find out that in all parts of history, people were coming to this region for their information and their knowledge and their things that were forbidden, and these were not these were the highest of human civilization.
Not even comparable to anyone else.
No.
Nor since. Nor since.
Right.
The Great Pyramid of Giza is insane.
Right.
It's insane.
Like even Tesla says that this is where he came to get the information. But if you follow that information pathway, it leads you to this character called Thoth, right? And the Emerald Tablets of Thoth are literally mind-changing and mind-blowing.
And he says the oath is an Anunnaki, which is an alien that came from another planet, and he came back after one of the floods to help kickstart humanity and teach us everything, give us knowledge. So I believe it. But maybe you think humans are 6,000 years old. I don't know. To each their own. Anyways, that's it for today. That's the thought experiment. Much love to all of you guys. Everything in this world requires thought, so always make sure to take a little time to meditate, reflect, and think about it. All right? Peace.